Anything, ask Alan anything. Is it cold outside? Should I run and hide? How do I take my company worldwide? Do you love the law? Did you watch Hee Haw? What's the weirdest thing that you ever saw? What's it like in court? Favorite sport? Can you help with my book report? Is my hair too long? Am I right or wrong? And do you mind if I sing along to anything? Ask Alan anything in the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Ask Alan, the podcast. I'm Alan Crone, the CEO of the Crone Law Firm. And today I've got a great guest with me, Chip Washington, who is a media personality here in Memphis. He's world famous in Memphis and hosts not one, but two radio shows here in town. And Chip, thank you for hopping on the call, and let's talk a little media and talk a little bit about Memphis.
Well, thank you so much for the invite. Really appreciate it. Really respect you, and it's great to be here.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, Chip, are you tell me about your backstory? Are you from Memphis?
No, born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I grew up there. I actually moved to Memphis in the mid-90s. Well, my first foray into the South was Meridian, Mississippi, back in the early 90s. I had always had a dream of getting into broadcast news in that area. And a station in Meridian, felt pity on me back at the time and hired me. So I moved there first and worked there for a little bit. Then I went to Jackson, Mississippi, and worked for several years at other various TV stations and at the Tougaloo College and things like that. And wound up in Memphis in 1995 when Fox 13 saw a resume tape when they were about to start their first morning show, Good Morning Memphis, which is still on today. Mm-hmm. I was the first, and I was hired as the first weathercaster on Good Morning Memphis.
Well, very good, very good. Well, how does a young man in Tinseltown decide to go radio as opposed to the movies?
Well, good question. Actually, TV was always kind of my thing. So, and I worked at a film studio back home before I came. I worked at 20th Century Fox, and a much lower level position. But there was something about the entertainment and news has always been something that I was always interested. I don't know why, I don't know how, but And so when I started to I decided that I wanted to do news. I had sent resume tapes all over the country, and like I said, Meridian, Mississippi, little old market, with a one horse town, gave me a chance to learn some of the fundamentals of the business and some back and forth. Then I got an opportunity to be a reporter. I learned how to do cameras, shoot stories, and I think all those experiences sort of helped me as I moved along the ladder of broadcasting. It's always been something that's been very important to me. The radio thing didn't come along until 2019. At some point, we'll talk about all that. But yeah, television news, broadcasting as a reporter, both behind and in front of the camera, it was always my thing.
Were you one of those kids growing up that was performing or cutting up, or is that a different part of your personality? Being on
television? I think that we used to, when our family used to drive around the city. LA is a place where it's widespread. I don't know if you've been to Los Angeles, but
never been to LA.
It's very widespread. You need a car to go from here to there. And we would go through Hollywood, and back in those days, the TV studios were big, the movie studios were huge. And I used to be the one that I would read billboards. I would every week pass us, a studio or this or that or whatever, or Hollywood, I would just read. My mother said, it's interesting that he does that, but no, not really, no real grandiose thoughts about it. Until, like I said, I had a chance to work at a film studio, which really didn't have a lot to do with broadcast television news. Although I did work at one of the local Fox affiliates back in the day. Again, there was always a buzz and excitement about that for me. And I just said to myself, you know what, I would really like to be a part of this one day.
So you get to Meridian, Mississippi, and a television station?
Yeah, TV station, yeah.
So I guess you did it all.
Yeah. I mean, because it was small. It was a very small market. There were only two stations in the market. It was an ABC affiliate and the NBC affiliate that I worked at. 2 months after I moved from Los Angeles, California, all the way across the country to Meridian, Mississippi, the station burnt down. I mean, burnt to the ground. And so I was fortunate because their sister station in Jackson, Mississippi, which was 90 miles to the west, owned it. And so they brought us up, they brought me up, to work there. So that's where I really got my first taste of daily newscasts, working behind the scenes, floor camera, audio, everything in the control room. You learn. So it was a great opportunity. And it also gave me a chance to do some associate producing, on the weekends, learning how to write and things like that. So that was really, my first foray into it. And these small stations are where you learn your craft. I mean, I was able to go back to Meridian when they rebuilt the station and had new management, and they hired me as a reporter, one man band. That they used to. And back in those days, those cameras were like 60 pounds. So I'd shoot for a reporter and go around, shoot stories and things like that. And again, you get a pretty good training doing that. And then I'll tell you a funny story. One of the talent there, we had 2 anchors, and then we had a weather person and a sports person. Well, the weather anchor at the time when we first started the station is someone that people know in this town right now, Wendy Nations, works over at Channel 3 now. She was the first weathercaster that at that station in Meridian, Mississippi. We worked together back in those days. And then she got her first job and moved on. And then they said, Chip, you got an interesting personality. Let's see how you do with weather. I promise you that's how it happened. I started doing weather there. I got called to Jackson, Mississippi again to do weather for a new startup morning show. And it's just kind of moved on from there.
Well, what was your favorite genre, if you will? Did you have a certain kind of assignment that you really liked to look forward to doing?
Well, I enjoyed doing weather. You weren't required to be a meteorologist, although it would be a good thing to have some familiarity with it. But I learned the business. I did it for 7 years, 3 television station startups, morning show startups, Jackson, Mississippi, and then of course here in Memphis, Tennessee. But I really like that. You had a chance to kind of display a little personality, plus, be able to give. It's always easier to do a forecast when it's 75 and sunny, rather than when it was snowing and things like that here. But yeah, I enjoyed that. And, I like reporting too. I think the reporting aspect of things for me was a way for me to really connect with people. When I was at Channel 5 here, I was the North Mississippi reporter. So my job was to go out and find stories in that area. And, I did. I mean, I shot my own stories. I did my own interviews. I wrote my own stories. I edited them, and I fronted them every night for 2.5 years. So I think you learn about yourself. You learn about people. And for me, I like the interconnection with folks. So there are days when there are decent, good stories, and there are days when there are really tough stories that you have to deal with. But I think you learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about other folks. And I like telling stories. That's one thing I really enjoy telling a story. Whether it's a good story or a bad story, I just think telling a story is really important.
Well, did you have any role models or mentors coming up that had a big impact on you?
In terms of the business, I came from Los Angeles, California, like I said, it's my hometown. So we had legendary television news broadcasters like Jerry Dunphy, and a lot of them gone now. But just to sit there and watch them, and I've been gone for a long time from the West Coast. But his opening tagline every night was, "From the desert to the sea to all of Southern California, a good evening." Here's what's happening. And so it's like those. I used to just look. I was just like, oh. And then I met him a couple of times, and I was really like, I was like, man, I've been watching you since I was a little kid. So I think he was a big influence on me. Some of the more legendary like West Coast guys, who did this. I think what excited me coming here to Memphis was, it was funny. I was working in Jackson, Mississippi, right, which is 220 something miles down the road, And I had never been to, I never drove up to Memphis until they called me one day. The news director said, "We saw your tape. I want you to come up and, want to talk to you about this morning show, to see if you want to be the weather guy." And I was like, "Oh, sure." And that was the first time I came up. When I saw Beale Street for the first time, I just lost it. I was just like, "Wait, what?"
What year is that? You're rolling into town
back in 1995 when I came up here for the first time, and
the town's changed a little bit since then.
just a little bit, yeah, exactly. So I just I really enjoyed. It's just something about watching people that you watch on television, and then you get a chance to work with them every day and really see what they're all about, and then you learn from them as well. And that was really that was really an interesting experience for me. But I love the medium. I love like I said, I just like news. I've been a newsie since I was a little something, and even today people will tell you, my wife will tell you, he watches I watch Lifetime, he watches CNN. So it's always been, I just been curious. I just like to know. And there was nothing to me, Alan, there's nothing, even today, there was never been anything more exciting to me than working in an active newsroom, because as you know, every 5 minutes there's something that have breaking. There's nothing like breaking news. All of a sudden you're doing one thing and then all heck breaks loose, and then everybody's flying here and flying there and doing this and doing that. And so I don't think there's never been any energy for me quite like an active newsroom.
Well, you talked a little bit about your influences. What would you say to a young person now who says, I want to be like Chip, I want to get into broadcast news? What advice would you give them?
Well, like most things, this business has changed dramatically. It really has, and it was much different when I was there. When I started working in television, the business of television, there was an off button. You know what I mean? I mean, it ended at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and that was it, right? And then 6 o'clock in the morning or whenever your morning news, that's when you started your day again. It's a 24-hour, 7-day a week, 365-day business now. And everything is go, 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 hurry, hurry, hurry. And, I would say if you're a young person and you have that kind of energy, I would say get in where you fit in, because it's hard to get in the door. But once you get in the door, then you have opportunities to learn while you're there. But I think that one thing that we did not deal with much when I first broke in was the digital divide. This digital media, that's it. This is where people get their information from. And for the old heads who didn't come up in that school, it was a bit of a transition. God rest his soul, my friend Ben Watson, you're from Virginia. He was, to me, and when we worked together, it was like he was the preeminent storyteller in this town, hands down. He did the story better than anybody I think I've ever seen ever in my career. And when we started having to do digital, we did our own stories, and then we had to write it again for the web. We had to write it again so he couldn't keep up. It was difficult when you've been doing something for 30 years one way, and then all of a sudden they want you to pick up the pace even more. Like God rest his soul, I loved him so much, but it was hard, and it's hard for a lot of people. I wasn't a big digital guy, but I had to learn how to be one, because this is the world that we live in now. And so I would say to young people, first of all, if you're lucky enough to get an internship, try to get internships at these TV stations if you can. Get inside the walls and just be a fly on the wall. Just learn everything. Just learn everything you can, because I remember very clearly when it was 2008, I think, somewhere in that area, they had Channel 5 did some layoffs. And we were walking around. We knew that day that there was going to be some layoffs, but we didn't know who. That was when they let go Donna Davis. She lost her position, and several other folks did as well that day. And I asked my news director later, I said, was there ever any thought of getting rid of me? And she said, no. And I said, why? She said, because you know how to do more than one thing. That's the key right there to anybody listening to this. If they ever do watch this or see it, listen, learn everything you can about the business that you're in, because it makes you far more valuable if you learn more than one thing. You can plug in holes and fit in different things. That's how you become very valuable. And really, that's what saved my job. I was a one-man band. I mean, I went out and shot my stories, I edited, I wrote, I produced. Yeah, that was basically what kept me in the building.
Yeah, when I was coming up, and I think for a long time before that, you were either a television person or a newspaper or radio.
Yep.
And now you see people that are spread across all of those platforms. Might write something for the commercial appeal and be on a radio show and maybe do some television, then do some social media. And I think that seems to me from the outside looking in one of the biggest changes in your industry that I've seen.
It is. And you hit it on the head. And the person that comes to mind when you said all that, Otis Sanford. Otis Sanford is a television commentator. He writes for the newspaper. He also does a radio show at the same radio station I do mine at. And so, I mean, that's what I'm saying. And he's also a professor, for God's sake, at the University of Memphis. He teaches. And so, yeah, you have to be multifaceted. And I think he would probably tell you the same thing. I think it's if you possess a multifaceted skill set these days, because first of all, a lot of these entities don't pay, as well as they used to, but they want a person to come in and have like 4 or 5 different skill sets. I mean, all you have to do is look around to see it and hear it and things like that. So, yeah, I would say, and this all goes back for me for teaching. I've been doing what I do in this business for a long time, and I feel like I'm at the stage of my life that I want to give back to young people who are coming up. How would you suggest I do this? I feel like I have something to give, because I have a little experience, and I'm not afraid to offer, what I think is a constructive, suggestion. You do what you want to do, but at the end of the day, the more the better it is for you. Absolutely that. Yeah.
Now, as I said in the intro, you've got 2 different talk shows. Tell us a little bit about those shows, how they came about, and what you're trying to do.
So, I don't know. I was at MLGW one day, and I was I was a communication specialist over there, and I was thinking about really wanting to re-immerse myself back in the communication world. As television news gives you a minute and 20 seconds to tell a beginning, middle, and an end. You don't really get much out of that. So I wanted to be able to find a platform where I could do extended stories about things that matter. So I approached WMQM. It was a radio station, AM 1600 in this town. I talked to the guy. I said, "Look, I want to host a show." And he said, "What kind of show?" I said, "Well, I want to. It's a kind of a community affairs, public affairs show where I could interview people and talk about the pressing issues of the day." And so, I started there for a while. I did it there for a year, and then the station at the Crosstown complex concourse down there, rebuilt, revamped the whole 9 yards. I wasn't here when it was down and when it was Sears and stuff. So the station there was built, and WYXR 91.7, which was the old jazz lover station at the University of Memphis. But they kind of revamped it, they changed it, they kind of moved away from that. So it's still a music station. I had interviewed one of the guys that worked there. He was on my first show, and I said, "Well, look, if you guys are putting something together, FM dial and things like that, I would love to have a opportunity." So they built the station. It's a music station. It's a free-form community station. So it's 80% music, probably, and 20% talk. But he felt it was important. Robbie Grant is his name, and felt it was important to have a local talk component. He'd heard the show that I did at the other station. He really liked it, and so he brought me over. So I've been there since they've been on the air for 2 years now, so the show has evolved, a little bit. But the fundamental aspect of it is this is Memphis. We have a lot of issues, good, bad, sideways, front ways. And I want to talk to people about things that matter to the folks that live here in this city. So I have been very fortunate to have met a few people in the past. I like guests. I like interacting with people, asking the important questions. And I've had so many guests on my show. So I've been doing the radio thing now since 2019, so 3 years plus. And I've had so many guests on my show. People ask me all the time when they look at the guest list I've had in the past. They say, how do you get all these people on your show? I said, I just ask.
Yeah.
And they'll either say yes or no, right? And that's the fundamental aspect of it. Even in the show I do now on WLOK, the legendary WLOK.
Yes.
Couple months back, maybe 3 months back, I get a phone call. They have a show in the morning called Let's Talk About It, and it's from 10 to 11, and it's just a community, it's a show, right? It's a talk show. And so somebody was referred me. They said, well, they lost the person who was anchoring the show, hosting the show, and they was like, well, who can we get to host this show? They were talking to Mr. Gilliam and Melvin Cookin Jones, who was a legendary DJ over there. He said, I know exactly who you can get. Yeah, because he'd heard my other show. He said, Chip Washington, that's the guy. If he can do it, you need to get him. So they called me and asked me, and they offered it to me, and I've been there for about 3 months now, and enjoying that as well. I mean, I think, Alan, interviewing people for me is a gift. I think just being able to talk, to find out information, to ask the questions that need to be asked, and the biggest compliment to any talk show host, or at least to this one, is when I ask certain questions and they say, Chip, that's a really good question. And in my head, I'm going, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but I really enjoy it. I enjoy the interaction. I enjoy with people. Now the nighttime show that I do on WYXR called Real Talk Memphis, Mondays from 6 to 7 p.m. By the way, is not interactive in terms of callers. It is a guest driven show, and I usually have 3 guests per hour, and I talk to them about 10 to 12 minutes, which is long enough to give some good information. Whether you're a group, or you're an organization, whether you're trying to put something together, or you're trying to get, and so that gives them enough time to really explain things. And it gives me enough time to be able to ask the pertinent and relevant questions that I think need to be asked depending on what we're talking about.
Well, those types of shows are in a place like Memphis are so helpful to be able to cross-pollinate between communities. Yeah. And we don't do that enough in America. And I think we've got to. I'd ask you, because you've been kind of at the forefront of this. I think Memphians tend to be more willing to come out of their, silo, if you will, than a lot of places.
I think so. I mean, we're a smaller city. I have always been interested in people who lived here all their lives, so they can talk about the changes that they've seen, from one decade to another, to where we are today. And I think that people, and I think that what I'm excited about is there are so many groups and organizations, and you're in city government, you understand, you're a city councilman, you understand how this thing works. I mean, there are so many people who are trying to do good things, really the right kind of things to move this city forward. And those are the people I enjoy talking to, because, for a lot of people out there in the city, they may not have heard of the organization. And so these folks are just excited to have an opportunity to be able to talk about what they do. And of course, not only being able to inform the audience, but really educate me, because there's a lot that I don't know about a lot of these groups. And I'm just like, wow, I had no idea that this was going on. So I feel good about the fact that we are putting something out there that maybe a lot of people never heard of. And then, my show's on Facebook Live. So, there's always a component of people checking the show out. And when they say to me, Chip, great show, great information, I want to put on an informative show. And so when people say, man, that was a great show, some great information, then I think I've accomplished, what I set out to do, And like every week, I try to find, if it's a newspaper, I do my research like I did when I was in television. I mean, it was a newspaper story that I saw that interested me, I'll reach out to that person. If it's a TV story or what have you, I'll reach out to them because I think that people do need information. And I think that, and you're right when you say people are more willing to do that, right? But they're also willing to do it if they trust you as a journalist. You have to be trusted enough to be able to, to not take cheap shots, and just be honest, straightforward, but make the people. And I always tell young people this: when you do radio in particular, the person you're interviewing is the star of the show, not you. You set them up with the proper questioning and things like that to keep the conversation moving, but make them feel like they're important enough to be there and talk about whatever they want to talk about. And I think that's the thing. You minimize yourself and you maximize your guests.
Well, Chip, I could talk to you all day. You're one of those folks that, like you say, you're a good storyteller and you know what's going on. So I really appreciate you hopping on the call and sharing your story with us. And I appreciate you very much.
Listen, man, thank you so much for the invite. I'm humbled by it. I always wonder why people want to talk to me about anything, but seriously, you're a great guy, and thank you for all you do for our city, even continuously now. These shows that you do have purpose and value, and we need more of them. So I'm humbled, man, by the invitation, and great to be with you. I really enjoyed the time.
Very good, thank you. Again, that was Memphis media legend Chip Washington talking about his life and his shows. Again, if you enjoyed this podcast, and why wouldn't you? It was a great podcast. Please share us on social media, like us, rate us with 5 stars on your podcast provider. That helps us do this without sponsors. And I'm going to go get some justice, and Chip is going to go inform Memphis.